Hi, welcome to Fantasy Fiction Focus once again. Here we are today. We're talking to Nina Munteanu, who is, well, I was going to say the author of and name a book, but you've written far too many books for me to mention. So why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, thank you, Simon. It's wonderful to be here, and you pronounce my name just perfectly. That's awesome. You must have some Romanian blood or Gypsy blood or something. Anyway, yes, I'm an author of. I've written a lot of different things. Thank you for that segue. I mainly write science fiction. I also have dabbled in lately in fantasy. And I teach writing, so I also have a couple of writing books that are actually used in universities and colleges all over the place, all over the planet. So that's what I do. And one of the things that I'm really my passion, which comes through in my books, is on ecology. That's my sort of where I come from. I'm an ecologist by trade. I've taught a lot of different courses in university, and the environment is something that's very important to me, so that usually infuses into my books. And there's a new category out there sort of emerging. It's basically called ecofiction, ecological fiction, or ecoSF, and most of my books they fit under that genre.
What is it? ecoSF? That sounds very interesting. So, environmental stuff, I guess, or that is saving the environment, or damage to the environment, or end of the world through catastrophe things, is now a trend in science fiction and fantasy. Is that correct?
Oh, definitely, definitely. Actually, a lot of people don't. It's not just in science fiction or fantasy, but that's what we're talking about here. So that's what I'm going to focus on. But climate fiction, for instance. Margaret Atwood's stuff, a lot of other works are out there that aren't necessarily called science fiction, but they definitely involve science and they're fiction, so they actually are science fiction. But apocalyptic type stuff, a lot of even you can even see that in the movies that is emerging. Interstellar is a good example. That movie about the train, I forget what it's called, Bullet Train or Train Bullet or something, usually have elements of climate change in them or apocalypse of some kind that involves the environment. And so it's definitely in the science fiction genre.
Now I'm more of an expert in this. I suppose anybody could go out there and say, "Oh, I'm going to write an end of the world story" and things like that. I mean, we had the movie 2012 and asteroids hitting the Earth in movies. We've had all those sort of things in the past. But I suppose you have inside knowledge that you could put into a book on this sort of thing.
Definitely. And I don't think anyone just decides, I'm going to write an apocalypse thing. I mean, I'm sure Margaret Atwood didn't decide that either. My background is ecology. I used to teach it. I still teach it from time to time. I taught college and university ecology. And in doing so, you get a feel for what's going on in the environment, and it brings out your passion for things, and of course all good writers bring out their passion. They have a passion for something. That's usually the thematic element that comes out, and then it sees itself as a premise or part of the plot, and then you pursue how you dramatize that, and you pursue how people will play themselves out in a crisis of that kind, right? So it's a little bit visionary. It's looking at what if, and it's a very exciting place to be. And I like to think that it makes people think. It's not polemic or anything like that. It's definitely telling a story, but it's on a topic that is important, and I think it's on people's minds, which is why ecofiction is out there. It's because that's what people are thinking about. I teach at U of T, like I said, and George Brown. I teach science fiction courses there. And what's really neat is the students that come in, they come in with a work in progress, a WIP, and we work on that. It's a small class. It's like a workshop type thing. And what do you know? They're coming in with ecofiction. I'd say easily 60% of the class or 70% of the class is writing ecofiction. Imagine. So they're coming in with that. That's what's on their mind.
Okay, so I guess then, so if they're doing this, of course, and obviously you are extremely knowledgeable on this topic, do you need to be very knowledgeable about eco stuff to write one of these books, or if you did, would you be in danger of overloading the book with too many techie facts?
Ah, that's an excellent question. You mean like, I was going to give a name, I was going to drop a name. I won't. If you know too much, yeah, you may dump it in. But if you're a very good writer, you're not going to do that. So somewhere in there, you strike a balance. You want to write like
historical fiction.
Pardon me?
Historical fiction people probably much the same way. They know so much about the Victorian era or whatever it is they're writing about, and they're probably tempted to put too much in, and it's not really necessary to the story. So I guess it's the same kind of thing. Now, I just wanted to touch on something we talked about earlier as well, quickly, because you mentioned teaching. Now, you said you're teaching classes to engineers to teach them how to write or something. What was that about?
All right. Okay. I also teach through the engineering science program at U of T, and what I'm teaching there is a design. I'm helping to teach engineers how to write in a design course, which is a course that every engineer that goes into U of T has to take. So I've got like 900 students, entry-level students, coming through the course, and they all have to learn how to write. And you know, they're engineers, for God's sake, so they don't exactly know how to write. So this is a different kind of writing, though. This is essentially technical writing, but it's also a persuasive writing, right? So they're writing like proposals, they're writing project statements and those kind of things. They're taking client statements and they're putting them on an engineer slant and giving them back to the client. So they have to take something that's very technical and create something that is easily read by a layman, because most of the clients aren't engineers, of course, right? That's why they're hiring the engineer. So they're learning how to design and they're learning how to write, and I'm doing the writing part. I co-teach this, obviously, with design teachers and engineers. So it's a lot of fun, and these kids are bright kids. So they think they know it all, right?
Far removed from science fiction and fantasy, or not?
Pardon me?
Is it sort of far removed from writing science fiction and fantasy, or is it simple?
Actually, it is different enough from writing fantasy, from writing fiction. But maybe there is a fair bit of fantasy there in design, right? there are some a lot of similarities in terms of writing well. So a lot of the things that I teach to my students in the science fiction class, I'm actually teaching similar things to these engineers in writing clearly, writing simply. That's actually harder to do than most people think. To write simply, to take a complex topic and put it into simple terms. That's a challenge, right? So that's what's interesting. I wanted to bring up too is these students that are writing this kind of stuff in engineering. Believe it or not, they are also very interested in science fiction. Makes sense too that there's a similarity there. So when they find out that I teach science fiction, they get all excited. So that kind of helps too.
Yeah, I guess there's a connection there and everything. Now, as well, you're doing all this teaching and everything, but obviously, you know, we're talking science fiction and fantasy usually on here. Now, have you had a book or anything that's just come out, or are you working on something currently?
I certainly am. I'm working on a couple of things. I just put out something I'm proud of. It's actually a collection of my short stories that I've been writing over a significant time period, and I had enough, even though it's fairly slim, but it is short stories that came out last year. Dark fiction. It's called Natural Selection. So it's very environmental. It speaks to where we're going, our evolution. A lot of dark stories. It's funny, I was just thinking my short stories tend to be very dark, and my novels aren't quite as dark, but maybe that's because they've got longer to go. The story arc is able to come to some kind of resolution that's more positive. But again, very much to do with the environment. What I'm working on right now, which is going to be coming out hopefully later this year, is actually nonfiction. It's about water. It's a project that I've been working on for a little while, and it's a culmination of essentially 20 years of my own work as a limnologist. Prior to teaching here at U of T, I taught at college and university at UVic out west as a limnologist, which is the study of
water, I guess. I don't know.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say the study of limbs. It's not the study of limbs. Limnos in Greek means water, and then of course the study of. So it's actually the study of fresh water.
I was right. I'm an expert on this now. Thank you.
Yes, you are. Yeah. So it's to me it's a very important issue. All my books usually have underlying important issues for me, and that's why I write them. I think that's why any writer goes out and writes, because there's something that they're passionate about, and they bring that to a situation and they dramatize it through character.
So you've been doing this. You've been doing this for a while. I would imagine. I've seen your name around for quite some time and everything. So when did your first published work come out?
Well, I started with magazine articles and short stories. So before I even published my first short story, I was writing articles, again in the environmental field. And then I started with short stories, which is why I now have a collection. And they got published in magazines. But my first novel came out in 2007, and it was Darwin's Paradox, again with the title, like a title, right, like that. Does it show up?
That many times that in various places online and things. Yes, I'm aware of that one. Now,
Yeah.
that's 2007, and now we're what 2015. So you were mentioning earlier about your work is available and everything in all these different formats, and e-books and everything, and even graphic novels, I think you said. So you're sort of active all over the place.
I like to be all over the place. I'm a gypsy. I ask people where I am right now, and they won't know. I'm like that with books and literature and everything, I suppose. I like to be diverse. I'm an ecologist. Diversity is king. I think the way the industry is going right now is it's reflecting that too, and I think it's a very good thing for people to posture themselves that way. I've always wanted to do that anyway. So I take a book, I write it, and I like to see it in all different formats. So any one of my books tends to be in print, tends to be in an ebook format. I have a connection with an audiobook publisher, and often my books are in audiobook format, which is very exciting, by the way. It's awesome experience to get that done. Particularly, well, the only way to get it done is professionally with what do you call those? A voice artist who really knows what they're doing. And it's a whole different format. It's so cool. But my first love, Simon, is with graphic novels, actually. And this is something, before I became a scientist, I wanted to be a cartoonist myself. And I love the graphic art format because it's the next step up to movies and all those types of things, which I'm in love with as well. So the graphic novel is something that I really, really love. And it's something that it's on my bucket list for my books to be in. And I think very visually. I write visually. I've been told my work is easily visualized by readers.
So this is transforming your books then, the existing
yes.
graphic novels, or doing something completely new as a graphic novel from the start?
Right. Well, both. I really always wanted to do a graphic novel, but I have a series of actually a trilogy, my trilogy, the Splintered Universe trilogy, which I've told is really visual, and it is, and it would make a kick-ass graphic novel. And so I'm going to be looking into. I am looking into that with a few people, into creating a graphic novel. Another format, by the way, another very cool format, which I really want to do, and I think some people are doing, is creating a video game out of a book. So originally you've written a story.
Connections in that area, the people you know who can do that? That sounds very interesting.
Yeah, I do. I have some connections in that area too, and that's very, very exciting. So an interactive, again, that's an interactive format, right? Which is just awesome. So anything, and that can play into a number of different things. I mean, look what the youth are doing, and look what we're doing. I mean, I don't know if you play video games, but they're really awesome out there. What's happening is the video games are actually coming toward us in terms of novelization. To me, some of the best video games have very strong narratives that come with the part that you then play in terms of looking for something or doing some battle or whatever. They often come with this incredible narrative. Like I started off way long ago with Myst. I don't know if you remember that game.
Not a gamer myself. I know people who do, but it's not something I've ever really got into. But I've noticed in recent years some of these things like the Halo ones and Assassin's Creed and some of the other ones. They have huge story arcs in them. It's like Game of Thrones as a video game.
Well, exactly my point. So things that have really strong narratives, they make awesome video games as long as there's something that you can put in that applies to the video game format, and a lot of them do. So it's kind of.
You mentioned when we started out, before we started out here, about, and I think it's something we should perhaps mention, most people out there, whether they're writing science fiction, fantasy, or something else, are going to think to themselves, well, I'm going to get my book published, and then the publisher's going to look after all this stuff for me, and I just have to sit back and rake in the money. I don't have to do any investigating. But you have tracked down a lot of these things yourself. As an author, I suppose. So can you tell us a little bit about that for the benefit of the viewers?
Oh wow, yes. Okay, it's really worthwhile to get out there and figure it out yourself. If you're going to sit back and wait for these things to happen, nothing's going to happen. I have a couple of friends who, kind of got into the ebook thing. They're going, okay. It's really, actually, it's very easy right now to publish an ebook. It's extremely easy. The thing is, as easy as it is to publish it, it's equally that hard to get looked at, to get found. You can get your ebook out, but then what happens? It just sits there. You can get it out. It can sit on Amazon or Kobo or wherever, Barnes & Noble even. You get a little special deal with some of these book publishing or book printing companies that they call themselves publishers. And then your book sits there and it's zero, right? It doesn't rank anything. It just, no sales. When people go out and do stuff themselves, one of the biggest things that writers have to do right now, and this is even with the traditional publishers, is go out and look for ways of making yourself seen. And one of the step one part of that is to brand yourself, to understand who and what you are as a person, as a writer, what you represent. For instance, me, I identify myself with ecology. I'm an ecologist. I write eco-fiction. I have a real passion for the environment, for water right now particularly is my thing. I've been a practicing limnologist for 20 years, and my stories reflect that. So that's, in some ways, that's my brand. That's my personal author theme, and so I go out and make contacts. Now, more to the point of what you were asking, how to get out there. There's lots of buzzwords out there with SEO, going out on the internet and finding your way out there. it's a lot of hard work actually, but it's a lot of fun work too. The thing is, the internet is essentially the answer to almost the answer to everything in terms of getting yourself out there. You can find people on blogs. You can create your own blog. This is all the things that I've done. I created a blog when I first put out my book back in 2007. I had a really good friend who was really smart on the internet and basically saw things 5 years before they happened, so she got me connected, right? So she said, you got to start a blog. You got to start it long before your book even comes out. And you start about a year in advance, apparently, is where you're supposed to start to get the buzz out there and get people interested in, even if your book's not out yet, you know what you're going to be producing, right? Again, it's about back to branding. Your book is about this. So let's say, for instance, here's an example. My last book, my first fantasy book, The Last Summoner. It's the first fantasy book that I published. It's about a medieval time traveler who she starts off in 1410. It's the Battle of Grunwald. It's a very important battle for Poland. Only the Polish know about it, but that's okay. They really know about it. It's a very significant battle, and she travels to future France. There's a bunch of stuff that happens. So the book isn't out yet, but there's nothing stopping me from creating a website all about the Battle of Grunwald, time travel, medieval times, all the things that people are interested in that would normally be then interested in the book too. So what you do is you create a buzz around the topic and then get yourself out there, create your own blog, but then go and guest blog on other people's blogs. And nowadays people are doing a lot of that, but back when I started, hardly anybody was doing it. So it's things like that, and then getting onto Facebook and Twitter, and then all those media are essentially just connecting to a larger net of the same story that's getting out, and then it kind of interlaces.
So if you were doing that, if you were just, if you people hopefully watching this who are aspiring science fiction and fantasy authors, and they think, well, yeah, I'm going to write my book and then I'm just going to not do anything, is that going to work? No, it's not by the sound of things, is it? I mean, everyone is clearly trying to get themselves noticed with blogs and Facebook, Twitter, and everything else that's out there, and yet if you didn't do that at all, you certainly wouldn't get noticed, right?
Yeah, well, the thing is, Simon, is everybody writes for different reason too, though. Because if you just you really want to write. I mean, that's what writers are. They really want to write. They want to express. Truly, they want people to read them too. I sure do. I do, very much. But the thing is, the writing itself is very important as well. It's a process, as you all know. You've written a number of things. The writing itself is its own satisfaction too. It's got to be. So I'm not saying that this is for everybody. So let's say you write something and you've achieved that. That's an incredible achievement. Maybe only 5 people read it. Maybe that's okay. Maybe, because Twitter, Facebook, SEO, all these things that I was just discussing isn't for everybody. Not everybody wants to go out there and be in everybody's face. For some people, just the writing is enough, and their book will go out. Maybe they won't sell very many, but that's its own achievement. So I don't want to detract from that. There are many different steps in the writing process, many different levels of achievement for people. If you're, let's say, if you're a budding science fiction writer, and most of them are in my class, obviously they are, most of them do definitely want to be read a lot. They want to be, in fact, most of them want to be famous, right? They want to be out there, they want to be a bestseller, they want to make a lot of money. So they're ambitious. They're serious authors with serious career aspirations. That's a different story, but not everybody's the same way. So the key is to connect your ambition with what you need to do. So
yeah, and I guess there's some people as well. I mean, this has come up with a few other interviews I've done, and also just in conversation, in classes I've run at the universities and everything here. It's not for everybody is not comfortable certainly everybody isn't comfortable with teaching. Some people aren't comfortable with book signings or doing things like this online or anything. They're not comfortable with that, and so they just don't want to do it. So it's not for everyone. But one of the things I just thought about here was you talk about making connections and networking and all this sort of stuff. Now, in the science fiction and fantasy community, probably more so than any other genre, there's a lot of conventions and meetings and goodness knows what else that people attend on a regular basis. I'm not just talking about the big comic expos. I mean, there's all these little cons and things. Do you go to those? And if you do, are they valuable? Are they worthwhile?
Yeah, good one, Simon. And in class 1 in my science fiction course, I bring up the convention. The first class, the very first class, I tell my students about some of this kind of stuff. I link up with them in terms of figuring out what their aspirations are, what their ambitions are, what they're comfortable with in terms of what they need to do as authors to promote their work. But the very first thing that I talk to them is their community, their local community, and the larger sci-fi community, which in fact is everywhere. It's all over the world. It's online, right? That's the beauty of the internet, is you can connect with your community irregardless of the geography. But the beauty of the conventions, and in every city they have conventions. Here in Toronto, there's Ad Astra is coming up in April. It's a great one. The World Cons sometimes come here. In Halifax, there's HalCon. In Vancouver, there's it's called ValCon? Whatever. Vancouver Con. VCon, sorry, it's called VCon. And you've got some awesome cons there. You've got When Worlds Collide, which I like to go to. The convention, the sci-fi convention, particularly for sci-fi writers, it's double-fold. It's a convention of writers and readers. It brings them together, and it brings the sci-fi community together, readers, writers, whatever, and they get to mingle. So there's this awesome opportunity to network, for a young budding author to meet an established author. Imagine what you can do there. I met for the first time Robert J. Sawyer at VCon way back, I don't know how many years ago, when I first started writing. The first con that I went to, the first professional writer I met. And what an amazing meeting. I discovered that Robert J. Sawyer is a person. He's a really nice person, very approachable. He gave me some awesome advice in an important part of my career, because I was just starting off. And off I went, and I learned an awful lot in that con. So you meet people, you learn things in the panels. There's sometimes, a lot of the cons have workshops now. In fact, I teach some of the workshops in several of the cons, writing workshops and they're often they're free. You just pay for the con to get in.
So worthwhile then, obviously, to connect with people and this sort of thing. But even if you didn't magically meet the publisher who's going to make you millions, I guess would this, as an aspiring writer who really wants to get their work out there and published, it'd do your confidence the world of good, wouldn't it, as well, to meet other people who are doing this?
Definitely, Simon. It does a lot of things. It brings you your community, and think of that. There's a support network with community. You find out how people got where they needed to get, all the pitfalls too, but they still made it. They scrambled up to there. You get to ask questions of people that you would have otherwise. You meet other people such as yourself who are starting off. I've had many people start writing groups based on people that they've met at these cons. You get a chance to see everything to do with that genre, as well as the publishing and every aspect of writing. So it's a rich place to glean a lot and to help with your process. Writers let's face it, we write in often in a room all by ourselves in isolation. So we're like shepherds, right? Tending our sheep there up on the hill. The convention is is when the shepherd comes down into the village, right, and eventually sees people again after he's seen all those sheep for a while. You've got to do that.
It's definitely a case. I think all of us, well, both of us, I suppose, but everybody, a lot of people I meet, we definitely live in a very isolated world in some ways, because it is, by its very nature, it's a solitary life you have to live, because you have to live in a certain world, and you have to have privacy and peace and quiet to do these things. How some people can write in coffee shops on laptops, I'm not really sure, but some people can do it. I can't do it. I could never do it.
I can do it. I love doing that. I just turn off.
Yeah, because we live in that because we have to live in that isolated world, I suppose. I think it is important to connect with people, whether it's children's book groups that I belong to, or things like these conventions. I think it's important. Yes, I'd agree with you to get out there. Otherwise, you'd probably go crazy being on your own all the time. So yeah, are you visiting some of the events in this year? Are you going to anything this year?
Definitely. I'll be at Ad Astra. I'm doing some workshops there and panels. That's this April. And in August, is it August? Yeah, in August I'll be going to When Words Collide. I love that con. It's a general con. It's not just for science fiction. It's a writers' festival, essentially. So all the genres are represented there. And that's good, too, for someone who's writing science fiction, for instance, who is a science fiction writer. It's good for them to go, for instance, to a romance con, or something, and talk to people who are writing something different, or reading something different. It's good to get out and just open up your doors a little bit. So it's totally into writing. It's run by some awesome people in your town, and I love going there. So I'll be there.
Well, hopefully I'll be. I'm not sure what my schedule is for this summer yet, but I'll wait and see how things go with that, I guess. But I guess we should probably, both of us, get some writing done, since we are writers. So I guess on that note, I would say thank you, Nina, for being with us today. It's been great to hear about what you have to say about everything to do with the industry, really. Obviously, people can visit your website and find out more about you and your books and all sorts of good stuff like that. Everything will be on the video once we've finished and everything. So thank you very much for being with us on Fantasy Fiction Focus, and we wish you all the best in the future.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it, and I look forward to more. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.